Okay, welcome everyone. Today is June, what is it? June 26th. And we're here with Tom Ryan and Barbara Engelhardt, his wife. I'm Kevin Ryan, his son. And today's topic is cars, okay? Which is an unusual topic, but we've had many different cars and I have been able to assemble some pictures. But so your first car was the Studebaker, right?
Yes. When we got married, that was first car I had owned, my first car, and I was already almost out of college before I owned a car. I always said that it cost not having a car to pay for college, because my buddies all bought cars right out of high school, and I went to college, so I had to wait. So it was a wonderful car, and we went dating and driving back and forth from my mail carrying job in Waukegan into Chicago to visit Maryland. It was good duty, and we enjoyed it very much. But it wasn't a family car. Certainly, it's such a small 4-cylinder. I think the real cars started with our camping when we lived in Meadowdale.
Sorry, but question is this the Studebaker?
No, that's a Chevrolet.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it was even mine. I think I borrowed it for the day to have a new car. I think it was my parents' car. So I, in Meadowdale, in 1960, Ginger was born, and we started thinking about camping. So I went out and in a newspaper ad, I found a car in the want ads that a man had handmade using old auto parts and very heavy wood, and it was beautifully crafted. And then when he got it done, his wife didn't like camping, not unusual at all. So he wanted to sell it, and he sold it cheap. I think I got it for $300, and it worked. It was well built, but too well built, so that our little car, we had a Ford then, it was about 1958, didn't even have air conditioning, small engine, trying to pull this heavy trailer. We went all the way to Yellowstone and then drove down to Rocky Mountain National Park, and we'd never been in the mountains before. So so we enjoyed pulling that heavy trailer. We didn't know any different, but sometimes going through the plains without any air conditioning. So one thing I did was get air conditioning in it.
I see gas tanks on the front, LP gas. Was that
right.
Or was that for the
stove? So you could cook, and sometimes on a cold night, you'd run the stove to keep the tent warm. And so he had built this trailer and put the bottle of gas on there. And the tent was a old World War I think, Army tent. And he had fixed up, but it kept the rain off. It worked, and we used it. But the poor car trying to pull that thing was it's really, and so we needed another car. And by the time Ginger was 4 years old, we bought a 1964. Now you kids were not babies anymore. We had 2 in diapers on that trip to Yellowstone, but now we had, you were getting 4 years older, and we went on a trip in this yellow car with brown trim, and it was a Country Squire, and it was brand new, the first brand new car I ever owned, and it had a little larger engine than the Chevy had, and it was able to pull. Then Grandma joined us, so we had 7, and that pulled. The car would need. Grandma helped us buy a trailer, and it was more fancy trailer. Even had a shower in it and things like that. But it was really heavy to pull, and so this car wasn't pulling the big heavy trailer very well, even though it was new. So we had to start thinking of a bigger car again and a lighter trailer, and that trailer had 2 doors in it. It was really big that Grandma helped pay for so that she would have a little more comfortable bed when we traveled. And so we used that for quite a while. This is that car, that 64
No,
Country Squire.
this is 68 or 69. This is the
Okay, well
second.
then it's the 69. We traded
Yeah.
the 64 in for 69, and this is in Colorado. This is in YMCA camp of the Rockies in
Mhm.
Colorado, and you kids are now junior high. Ginger's in 4th grade, and Dan's in junior high, and you're in high school.
And
So now
this
you're
car,
big. We needed a car just because of your bodies. You needed more room, and
and
we
also a
called it.
bigger engine.
It had 3 areas. Way in the back is for luggage, of course, but you kids would like to go way in the back, and Dan especially liked to go back there. So he had plenty of room, but he had to sit Indian style. There wasn't any seat, and he would make sandwiches when we were driving down the road, and the kids would holler whether they wanted peanut butter and jelly or just jelly, and he'd make the sandwiches and then pass them up to the front of the car. And with 7 of us in the car, that was quite
Well, I
an
remember
accomplishment.
also that way in the back, the air conditioner never got back there, so it was really hot. Yeah,
It was hot
and
back there. Yeah.
the only
But
reason
we did have air conditioning.
the only
but
reason I liked
not
it, the only reason I liked it was that I could lay in the back and then read a book.
that's
You know,
yeah. We would also have one kid would get up in the next to the driver in the co-pilot seat and be the navigator, and they got the maps, and you all learned to read maps that way, and you had to find out where the road was and give directions to the driver, and whether it was Marilyn or me, and we so that we could get there, and you learned to read maps that way. And you listened to a lot of what you called 90-minute lectures. They never were 90 minutes long, but
They seemed like
they
it.
seemed like it. And the teacher and me couldn't resist giving you lectures on geography and why this was that way and why it was that way and so on. So
Grandma. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think I enjoyed it maybe more than you kids did, giving the lectures rather than receiving them. And I was usually driving, so I couldn't tell the expressions on your face whether you were enjoying them or not. But anyway, that was riding in the car and many miles lapped up, and you were always patient. Then we stayed in campgrounds along the highway and on the way, and these campgrounds, and you'd always ask, is there a swimming pool? Is there swimming there? And so, yeah, we get, oh, there's swimming.
Okay.
Good. So
Yeah,
then
Grandma.
we could, you could get cooled off in the swimming pool.
Grandma also had a car as well.
Yes, she had her own car and bought it, and she went out and bargained for it, and it was a Mustang, one of the first Mustangs off the assembly line. Lee Iacocca designed this car as a people's car, and it wasn't particularly powerful, but then the design of it wasn't very large, but it was well priced for a bargain for what you got, and it was a big seller, and it made Ford Motor Company came out of a doldrums in car sales, and that was a winner, and so she had one of those, and I always enjoyed driving it. It was stick shift. It didn't have a lot of power, so with a stick shift, you could get more power than you had with automatic shift. And it was a fun car. And she had it. She came and lived with us, and then she had one to drive around. She didn't have much money, so she had to bargain for it. And she didn't ask for any help in picking it out. That was all her. And we all lived in this house. This was 29 South Weston, right across the street. I'm almost in the schoolyard, high school yard, where I'm taking this picture. And we had about 6 cars here when you were teenagers. and Grandma had a car, and he had a car.
This is
And I
Grandma's
think
second.
Bluey is in the driveway there.
No, that's
That
the
was our
Scamper.
the last camper, and it was the best. We finally found the ideal one. It was light and efficient, and it didn't leak, and it was easy to pull. But Grandma lived up in the upper part of that house, and you guys made a bedroom in the basement. You even put the beds on wires and wired them to beams, so you had kind of like a
Good.
sailor's.
Yes, that's another story.
Yeah, right. Okay.
This
Anyway, that's the house
this
where
is
we
the
lived most of the time,
this
and
is
the school
this
was
is
right near the night water.
this is Grandma's second car, the Nova.
That's right, the Nova. So she kept herself in a car so she could drive on her own. And sometimes she'd go away and visit relatives in New Jersey. She grew up in New Jersey, Highlands, New Jersey. You could stand in Highlands and see the skyline of New York across the bay. And she grew up there in a fishing town in Highlands, New Jersey. So she'd go back and visit relatives sometimes. I think she had enough of all the kids and so on. And then she'd come back to us again. And she came and went on her own and could do all of that because she was fairly young when she retired. I think she retired before she was 65. Anyway, she had a car, you had a car, and I had a car, and Marilyn had a car. So we were cars everywhere around the house. And Barbara tells about her family had the same thing. And Ivan kept all the cars going because he was a mechanic. I was not a mechanic and could not fix anything in the car. So I was at the mercy of auto mechanics on the road. And one of them in Mexico, we had a 69 brand new country Squire, and it would cut out, especially when it got hot out in the desert all by ourselves. It just, all the electricity would stop, and we just glide to a stop on the side of the road. And we couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. Well, it turned out it was a coil that would get hot, and then it would short out, and all the electricity wouldn't work. And when the coil cooled off, your car could start again. We kept thinking it was something about the gasoline and the starter wouldn't work. And we never thought of this coil. And so the Mexican mechanics, we drive in with our brand new car and tell them that the car died, muerto. And they thought that was funny because in Spanish, cars don't die. People die. And muerto means somebody died, but yet the car doesn't die. So, but they knew what I meant. And so it died, but we'd be out on the highway. And when he showed it to them, they couldn't find anything wrong with it. So it was they'd try different things and it might be, and they were very helpful and they tried hard, but that was kind of a fright. The only bad time we had was with that. When we got back to Texas and we could speak English to the auto mechanic, they figured out what it was. I think maybe they knew that these coils were conking out on a lot of their cars, and they just replaced the coil, and away we went, and the car was fine from that. That was a 69. I think that was the last trailer pulling car we had, and by then you kids were pretty old. I mean,
I think another good story we have is the one about Dilley, Texas, but that's a different story. Here's
right.
Here's Dan and
Right.
and me.
Dan, again, you were in college, so you couldn't have a car. But Dan, he went to community college and he had to commute to school, and he loved cars, and he couldn't afford a very expensive one. So he would buy these cars, and like that, when we called it the Bondo Mobile. Bondo was a brand name for some goopy stuff that you'd put in place of metal, and you could fill in the holes in your car with Bondo, and he had more Bondo on the car than he had metal. So
well, he drove this thing down to Florida and back.
That's right.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
He and a friend, yeah, he was in college then, junior community college, and he finished at the Elgin Community College. I taught there too some, so it was right in our own town, and he could get an associate degree, and then he went off to Colorado. But he had a series of cars in the 2 years he was in community college, and he had a need for one to commute with, but he wanted something was different and have comments, and people would make their heads turn. And so he had a whole series of, I call them goofy cars.
Okay. Do you have any cars in your memory anymore that you can think of?
That Studebaker was the first one I owned, and I think I paid $650 for it. It was used, but it was new to me, and we had it through the birth of both you boys, and then we had to get something better as we had kids in the back.
Right. Okay. Good. Well, I think that's a good way to wrap it up then.
Okay.
Thank
That's
you very
the cars. We had cars.